What's up, YouTube friends? So today I decided I'm going to pull out the canner and can up some beef stew. Now I already have a beef stew video on my channel in my canning playlist, but this one is kind of a raw pack method. My previous beef stew video, you go ahead and cook the beef stew before you can it up. And like I said, this is more of a raw pack method. I am going to par cook my meat, at least brown it a little bit. You always get a better texture that way. You can raw pack it if you want to, but then you kind of get in that dog food texture territory. I always think you get a better product if you at least brown it just a little bit first. It holds its shape and texture better. Now this isn't as much as an exact recipe. I'm just going to throw in what I have. So of course I have some beef. Now Mother bought a big box of these little steaks at the grocery store. This is all we had left in the first box, and then she bought a second box. Our freezer is already pretty full, so that's one reason why I'm doing this. And in my personal opinion, really the only best thing I can make out of these is beef stew or beef stroganoff, something like that. Something in the slow cooker or the Instapot that really breaks down this meat. I've thrown a couple of these on the grill and they're pretty tough. I'm also going to be using just a few mushrooms. They're starting to go bad. I have my baby carrots. Some limp celery, perfect time to use it up. Onions, potatoes. Now I'll also be putting a little bit of Italian seasoning, and I like to use the Better Than Bouillon broth. You do not have to use this if you don't want to. You can just use plain water. You're also going to need some boiling water and some pickling salt. In the meantime, I'm going to chop up my vegetables, and I'll bring it back when we're ready to cook the meat. Alright guys, so I got everything all chopped up, and what I ended up with, I have about 8 cups of diced potatoes, and they're just kind of cubed like that. I have 3 cups of celery diced and 3 cups of onions, and I'm just going to mix those together. I just have a little bit of mushrooms. I'd probably get a full one if you're going to follow this recipe. And then I have a bag and about a half of baby carrots, and I think I'm going to just leave these whole. Now I had about 13 of those little steaks, and they're supposed to be about 8 ounces they say, but some are really small. So I'd say if you got a good 5 to 6 pound chuck roast and cut that up, or some stew meat, that should be fine. Now I am going to brown my meat beforehand, so I'm going to season it with some salt and pepper. So I'm just going to use some of this magic seasoning. Just season it to taste. And then some cracked black pepper. So now I'm just going to mix that all together, and I'll meet you over at the skillet and we'll start to brown off this meat. So I'm just going to add a little bit of olive oil to my pan. It is pretty hot. And I also have a pot of water over here that I'm bringing up to a boil. And now I'm just going to brown my meat in batches. It's going to take about 5 minutes or so. Alright guys, so it should look like that. It's not all the way cooked through, but it got some nice brown marks on it. So I'm just going to remove it over to this plate and brown up the rest. Alright guys, so I got my meat all browned up and my station's all ready to go. I have my lids over here in hot water. I also have my kettle of hot boiling water over here on my right. Right over here I have a little ramekin full of vinegar. Today I'll just be using apple cider vinegar because that's all I had. I'm just going to wipe the rims of my jars with those. And any vinegar left over I'm going to throw it in my canner because we do have hard water, and that'll keep it from clouding up on the outside. And I did not mention it before, but I have my potatoes setting in acidulated water. So that's just a little bit of water with lemon juice, and that just keeps them from losing their color. Now I'm hoping to get 7 quarts, at least 7 quarts, because that'll be a full canner load. So I'm going to start with my meat, and I'm going to evenly divide it up into these 7. You want about a cup, I'd say about a cup per jar. Alright guys, so it looks like I probably could get 8 quarts out of here, but I'm just going to evenly distribute this into the rest of the jars that I already have, just so I don't have to do one jar later. Now this is pretty cooled down, so I'm just going to use my hands. Next I'm going to add the mushrooms, and I don't have very many, so I'm just going to put a few per jar. I would go ahead and get a basket, if not 2, if you want more mushrooms. You could put quite a few mushrooms in here because they shrink down to about nothing when they can. Now I'm going to layer some potatoes in there. So I have about that many potatoes in there. And you can give it a little shake and a press down to fit more vegetables in. So now I'm going to add my baby carrots, and like I said, I'm just going to keep them whole. Maybe a handful per jar. Alright, so I have about a half a bag left, so maybe 1 bag of baby carrots is enough. Now I'm just going to give them a little shake to settle everything. And we're going to want to leave a 1-inch headspace, and that's this line right here. Alright guys, so I have that many potatoes left, not very many. And I only used about half of my onions and celery mixture, but that's fine. I'll just put that in a bag and we can use this all week long. Next, I'm going to put a teaspoon of pickling salt per jar. I'm then going to put just a 1/4 teaspoon of Italian seasoning per jar. Now I'm not going to do any more than a 1/4 teaspoon because sometimes the herbs have a tendency to go bitter or just take over your whole stew. And finally, I'm going to put half a teaspoon of the Better Than Bouillon per jar. Now normally I would put a whole teaspoon per jar, but I'm actually running low. Now this is not a USDA approved recipe, so please use your best judgment if you decide to make this recipe. So I'm just going to dollop a little bit in each jar. Now this bouillon is totally not necessary. You could just put beef broth or just use plain water. Alright guys, so now I'm just going to top this off with my hot water. And like I said, you want to keep an inch headspace. Alright guys, so that was about 1.5 cups of water for this jar. So now I'm going to take my air debubbler and just go along the sides, making sure there's no air bubbles. Now after you debubble, check your inch headspace, and it looks like I could add a little more water. So now I just put a little bit of vinegar on my paper towel, and I'm going to go along the rim just to make sure there's no fat or grease or anything that will cause this not to seal. I'm going to grab one of my hot lids, place that on, and a ring. You just want to tighten it up to fingertip tight, and I'm going to set this off into the canner. So now I'm just going to fill the rest of these up, and I'll meet you over at the canner. Alright guys, so I have my canner full. I'm going to add my glug of vinegar to my water. Then I'm just going to put on my lid. I'm going to crank my heat up to high. And then I'm just going to wait for my little spit cock to start spitting out some steam. You want it to be a steady stream for about 10 minutes. And I'll bring it back when I'm ready to put on my weight. Alright, so I let this vent for 10 minutes once it came up to a steady stream. Now I'm just going to stick on my weight. And I'm going to start my timing when this comes up to 11 pounds of pressure. That's what it is for my area. And then I'm just going to regulate my heat to keep it above 11 pounds of pressure. It usually settles out between 13 and 14 for me. Once that hits the 11 pounds of pressure, I'm going to start my timer for 75 minutes. That's how long it takes for quarts. If you're doing pints, it's 60 minutes. So once my 75 minutes is up, I'm going to turn off my heat and I'm going to let this cool down naturally. And just that simple and easy, we have 7 quarts of beef stew that I can make anytime I need a quick and easy dinner. Then I'm just going to let these cool down completely till tomorrow morning. I'll wash the outsides of the jars and I'll remove the rings and label them and throw them in the canning closet. I hope you give this recipe a try. If you like this video and want to see more of my videos, go down below and hit that big red subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up. If you'd like to support this channel, head on over to my Etsy link and to see what I'm making over there. I recently put up some one-of-a-kind Scrappy's Patch merch. I'll also have my social medias linked down below if you'd like to follow me and friend me over there. And as always, thanks for watching, happy canning, and I'll see you next time.